Hello Star Wars fans, and welcome to episode 94 of Journey into Legends. Today we'll be starting the Force Heretic trilogy with Book 1, Remnant by Sean Williams and Shane Dix. Remnant was released in 2003, and it is the 15th book in the New Jedi Order series. I don't know what to expect from this trilogy, I haven't heard much, but anyways, I'm excited to continue this brilliant series. So without further ado, let's read and review. After the New Republic's huge counter-offensive in Destiny's Way, the reformed Galactic Alliance now struggles to maintain their advantage and spread their influence. As part of these efforts, Han, Leia, Jaina, Jag, and Tahiri set out to reconnect with isolated corners of the galaxy. In this book, they travel to the planet Galantos and the neighboring Cornact cluster from the Black Fleet crisis. Overall, this plotline was pretty bland, and it just didn't offer very much entertainment value. The mystery on Galantos wasn't very intriguing, and then, unfortunately, what happened at Enzoth with the Yvetha getting wiped out by the Yuuzhan Vong was all off-screen, or off-page, I guess, which was pretty disappointing. Enzoth, the Yvetha, and that connection to the Bantam era was really the only thing I was interested in, other than what was going on with Tahiri having these unexplained psychotic breaks and dreams involving the Yuuzhan Vong. However, I am interested to see how these plot lines develop going forward, with the crew heading off to Bakura for the next book. Another plotline in this book, which I found much more interesting than the Galantos plotline, followed Luke, Mara, Jason, Danny Kui, Saba, and Tekli as they traveled to the Imperial Remnant to make peace and gather information about Zanama Seacoat. While we don't get too much development regarding Zanama Seacoat, we get a lot of really great stuff with the Imperial Remnant. So far, during the war, the Imperials have been pretty much completely ignored by the Yuuzhan Vong until now. Getting to see the Imperial Remnant led by Pelion work with the Jedi and fight against the Yuuzhan Vong was a lot of fun. Pelion himself was a complete badass in this book. After nearly dying at Bastion, Pelion spends most of the rest of the book in a bacta tank and even directs an entire battle from here, which was so badass. Then the book ends with Pelion finally convincing the Moff Council to ally themselves with the Galactic Alliance, and the Jedi set off on their journey to find Zanama Seacoat. This plotline was just so much fun. The battles of Bastion, Borosk, and the battle to free the captives on the slave ship were all so much fun, and like I said, very memorable to Pelion and the Empire's involvement. Our final major plotline of this book is very disconnected with the others and follows Nom Anor as he becomes a fugitive and infiltrates a group of shamed ones in the underworld of Yuuzhan Tar. This plotline heavily expands on the Jedi heresy plotline introduced in Destiny's Way, and I've said it before, I absolutely love this plotline. I find it so unique and interesting, and Nom Anor's involvement in it is simply genius. I really loved this book's exploration of the religion, such as the stories of Vua Rapung being spread among the shamed ones. I also loved seeing Nom Anor embrace the role of Yusha the Prophet, and I'm really excited to see how him and his followers fan the flames of this heresy in the coming books. So overall, this book was a lot better than I was expecting. This trilogy doesn't have the greatest reputation among fans, so I didn't know what to expect, but I actually quite enjoyed this first book. The Galantos plotline was fairly bland, but the Imperial Remnant plotline, and especially Nom Anor's, were so much fun, and I'm excited to see more of them. After the really high highs of Traitor and Destiny's Way, I can see why people would be disappointed by this book's relative small scale and seemingly filler content, but I didn't mind it. I think it makes sense for the Galactic Alliance after their major victory at Ep.94 to try and put the pieces back together and make some new allies, just as it makes sense for the Yuuzhan Vong to be scrambling and struggling to reestablish that superiority they're used to. Anyways, this book was fairly average as far as the series goes, but I still really enjoyed it. Alright, next we've got Star Wars Tales issue 19, which has 7 stories, starting with Collapsing New Empires, which follows our original trilogy crew after the fall of the Empire. After blasting a few surviving ties, they discover a bunch of sand crawlers floating in a nearby planet's orbit. They investigate on the surface of the planet and discover someone named Heretic, who claims to be an artist. Soon after, they are all attacked by Jawas and micro-droids, and the Jawas end up being droids as well, as is Heretic. He attacks the crew, intending to create a machine army to take over the galaxy. Luke ends up using his prosthetic hand to defeat Heretic, losing it in the process. This was a pretty weird, but also kind of fun story. It's also the only story to take place in 15 ABY, which is pretty cool. Next, we have the value of proper intelligence to any successful military campaign is not to be underestimated. A surprisingly short story with an obnoxiously long title. In this one, Imperials visit the planet Gibella and intend to claim the planet, but are attacked by the ferocious locals and learn why spacefarers leave Gibella alone. This one is nothing too special. I didn't mind it, other than that god-awful title. Our next story is Rather Darkness Visible, in which 2 Jedi named Obs Kaj and her master Lunis travel to the mining colony Katanos 7 to investigate rumors of cloning. They soon learn that the mine recently dried up, and looking for credits elsewhere, the miners tried cloning. When that didn't work, the Separatists offered them bounties for Jedi. The miners turn on the 2 Jedi, but are only able to kill the master, Lunis. When the Padawan escapes, she's able to get a message out and is later killed by Dooku. Overall, this was a decent story. It's cool to see little side conflicts like this during the Clone Wars, and I liked Katanos 7 as a location. Next, we have The Rebel Club, which is a comedic retelling of A New Hope and an homage to The Breakfast Club. Another non-canon comedic story, so this one's not even worth talking about, so we'll move on to our next story, The Lost Lightsaber, which follows the non-canon history of the Skywalker lightsaber after Luke lost it on Bespin. It ends up in the hands of a Jedi, then his Padawan, who turns to the dark side, and finally Ben Skywalker shows up to reclaim it for his family. This story wasn't very good, especially since it's non-canon, but I liked seeing Ben Skywalker show up at the end. Next, we have Into the Great Unknown, which is a non-canon, albeit really creative and awesome story in which Han and Chewie crash on Earth. Han is killed, and Chewie lives in the forests, becoming basically Bigfoot. The story ends with Indiana Jones showing up to help hunt Bigfoot, and he stumbles on the Falcon. Again, although this one was obviously non-canon, I ended up really enjoying it. This was just really creative and fun. Anyways, our last story is Storyteller, which follows 2 young alien boys, Otulp and Redon, as they travel to a nearby cave to visit a storyteller. They get there, and the storyteller ends up being a damaged C-3PO, and he tells the boys the story of the Skywalkers. The boys are eventually found by members of a rival clan, and one is killed, however the other finds a lightsaber and the story ends. Overall, I really enjoyed this story. It's rather bleak to see C-3PO end up like this, but I find stories in the far future like this really interesting, so I enjoyed this one. So anyways, this was a pretty good issue of Tales. There were a few stinkers, but I really enjoyed the first story, as well as the Indiana Jones and 3PO stories. Alright, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for my next video where I'll be continuing the Force Heretic trilogy with Book 2, Refugee. See ya.